What's the purpose of a corporation? I'm discussing a book that was discussed on the Capitalism podcast by Luigi Zingales and Bethany McLean. And the question is, the book itself, Woke Inc., is making a statement that uh, corporations are using wokeism as a pretext to expand their power and also kind of shake hands with the government or government institutions, bureaucrats, sort of a quid for quo where you, at least on the surface, represent some sort of social justice, equity, inclusion type movement, while under the hood, the same old corporate shenanigans are still happening, in particular that high-ranking corporate officers pay themselves a lot of money and that they're absolutely not doing what they're preaching in this woke capitalism type narrative. So in other words, Woke Inc. is just another dangerous marriage in hell, as this particular book is talking about, in a sense that you have on the one hand social justice warriors who are striking a deal with corporations that need government endorsement for shenanigans and therefore incorporate that cheap moral justice narrative and inclusion and all that stuff maybe in the workforce, but on the top, in terms of, let's say, if you take Wall Street and the power that Wall Street has and also the extraction that Wall Street has in terms of rent on the economy, keeps going. So that is the discussion. My point on this is that we have to change the narrative, or excuse me, the question. So is Woke Inc. real or not real, or any of that stuff is irrelevant. I think we need to be very careful when we discuss these types of topics, because what we want to do is define what is the purpose of a corporation and then let the corporation live within the context of the system, and then have the political side of things do its own thing. So let's separate these things and be very clear about what the purpose is of a corporation. Now, in our point of view, at Orange Capital Partners, the way we see things, the purpose of a corporation is in line with the purpose of our fund, which is to invest in fundamentally new concepts and engineering practices. This is the purpose of a corporation. So anybody else who's not doing that is not a corporation in a narrow sense. Anybody else who is not fundamentally trying to change engineering practices, concepts, in other words, investing most of its energy in R&D and transmissioning science into products and services that make the world a better place in terms of delivering value for lower cost. Anybody else is not really a corporation and therefore intermingled with politics. This is not In Wrong Podcast. It's November 25th, 2022. This is Krim Delco. It's Thanksgiving weekend. We have no updates. For the year, we are down 56.3%. The market's down 16%. We're underperforming by 40.3%. So we're discussing this book, Woke Inc. And like I said, the book itself makes the claim that this marriage in hell between social justice warriors on the political side that are in power in many powerful centers of the United States, DC, and also many powerful states such as California, New York, Illinois. So those sides, the political side of things, which is fighting for certain political means and fighting for certain political goals, that they're kind of combining themselves with the corporate side of America, corporate America, in terms of kind of handshaking a deal where they say, look, you guys propose a narrative into the corporation. You do something for inclusion and equity and all of that stuff. You try to help poor people or disenfranchised people or people who feel somehow disenfranchised. The list keeps going on. It's not just the poor, it's sexual orientation and all kinds of stuff. And then on the other hand, we give you a free pass on certain things, whatever that may be. Coca-Cola can keep selling sugar water. Banks can keep printing money for themselves, and when they lose money, they get bailed out by the Fed. All of those misworkings or mishaps of capitalism are still intact, but we have this social justice narrative or wokeism as an overlay that gives us a free hand to keep going. Now, I want to add another thing, which is a very, very dangerous part, and that is mission creep. Mission creep is a concept in economics that you learn, I think, in undergrad. Mission creep comes from the government, actually, and just means that, you know, you have the Department of Defense, which was, of course, very big during, let's say, World War II, but then never got smaller, because even if there's no wars, they start finding new missions. They start either making new wars or just new missions. Or we have to, let's say, the army in Switzerland is a good example where there's no real wars to fight. So the army has other obligations, you know, help in natural catastrophes and help with this and help with that. And in general, the mission keeps going because the budgets have to keep. You're not going to see an official bureaucrat or army general reduce their budget because they'll say, oh, well, we don't really have anything to do right now. So mission creep is a very dangerous concept that is happening. And I think Woke Inc. is just another description of mission creep within companies. So if companies take it upon themselves to do something about climate change, that is very dangerous, because that is mission creep. You know, Disney has a certain purpose, is to entertain people. I don't know what exactly their mission is, but it's something like that. And it shouldn't be that they do something about climate change. Even ExxonMobil is in the business of drilling for oil and delivering oil at the lowest cost possible to consumers. That is the mission of ExxonMobil, and not to do something about climate change. We can have our thoughts and discussions about climate change on a different level. Our views at Orange Capital Partners are that climate change is a bad problem, and therefore we shouldn't even discuss it that way. We should be more narrow in terms of, let's say, we want to decarbonize energy, or much better, have a conversation. How about we increase flexibility in energy sources by doing research and development, or, like I said, helping corporations to develop fundamentally new concepts and engineering practices in energy delivery and energy transportation. But let's get back to the main conversation. So from our point of view, mission creep is the real danger here. And we see a solution to that is a conversation at an academic level and hopefully practical and political level, where we narrow the purpose of a corporation to, listen, you've got to do something fundamentally new. If you don't do something fundamentally new, you're not really a corporation anymore. Then you have to be treated differently. You should be taxed differently. We should change your status. In the book Wokeism, the author also talks about the fact that we give corporations limited liability, which is a gift. Now, I don't know exactly about that, because if we look at the history of corporations, it goes back to the East India Company, the Dutch East India Company, and all that stuff. And there's certainly other reasons why that limited liability was granted back then and things like that. So I'm not quite sure why that was given. I think calling it a gift is maybe a bit exaggerated. Nevertheless, I think we can take that concept and back to our narrow definition of a corporation and basically say, look, if you do something technically risky, so if you do something fundamentally new, if you spend most of your effort, most of your money and capital, most of your energy into trying to tinkering new ideas, engineering, concepts. It doesn't necessarily have to be engineering and technology. It could be new business models. It could be new ways of let's say, GitLab has a complete remote workforce type model. So they're trying new things. So if you do new things, you should be treated differently than if you're Pepsi or Coca-Cola, which is doing nothing new, which has been doing nothing new for decades. And it's just simply through incrementalism and crony capitalism and trying to squeeze more profits out of an existing business. Those types of businesses should be treated differently, at least in the conversation. And then, from there we can go to things like taxes and general. Should Coca-Cola even have limited liability, because they're really not doing anything risky. So it's all up to them and their decency to do the right thing. And if they don't, they should be punished. So we could have that kind of conversation. So to answer the question, what is the purpose of the company? Again, here at Orange Capital Partners, we have a very narrow view. It is the same. It's an overlap with our own mission, which is to invest in fundamentally new concepts and engineering practices. That's what we do. And I feel our job would be a lot easier if a lot more companies out there would be doing what we actually want to invest in. But in fact, it's the exact opposite. I mean, the reason we have a job and the reason we think we have actually a purpose in the economic world is because most companies are disguising profiteering, sometimes fraud like FTX, and sometimes just profiteering and then the rent seeking like Coca-Cola and ExxonMobil and so on and so forth. All these companies are not doing what we are interested in. That's why we're not investing in. Now, there's of course companies like Walmart and Costco that are, I would say, borderline cases because they are actually delivering value at lower cost. However, there's also, things like power questions, massive power monopoly. Amazon, even Tesla soon will be a monopoly or is already a monopoly. So there's definitely questions on that front that need to be solved. But the fundamental purpose of the company, let's say Tesla, which is our largest position, is to accelerate the advent of sustainable energy through fundamentally new concepts and engineering practices. This is what they do. So therefore, it's fine. They're spending a lot of money in R&D. They're spending a lot of money also in lots of different things, not just research and development on, let's say, 4680 batteries, but changing the business model. One day we have more sales malls in malls, and then we have more online sales, and then we have this and we have that, and on the app, and they're doing a new trying to innovate in financing, and I think there's a lot more they can do there. So it's not just the battery technology or solar technology or AI. It's sometimes mundane things like payment systems. I was just in the process of buying a new car. I actually canceled my order because I figured it's not worth it. My old car is pretty good still. I have an old Model Y from 2019, and it's actually pretty good. It just has a lot of miles. I was thinking of changing to a new car, but the cost differential is too high. And interestingly enough, also, when I applied for a loan with Tesla, my loan got denied. Why? I don't know. Maybe I had some issues way back with some car loan. There was a dispute I had with BMW way back when I thought they screwed me over something, and then they sent me bills, and I disputed them and stuff like that. So they must have ruined my credit. Nevertheless, I think it's ridiculous. A company like Tesla, I've been a customer for 3 years now, and before that I've been a customer with other car companies. Never missed a payment. I'm relatively wealthy. I live in a rental actually where I pay. Never missed a rent. Nothing. I mean, I certainly would say, if I was a finance company, I'd be a happy customer. I would have myself as a happy customer. Nevertheless, they denied my credit. So there's definitely room for improvement there, that they can be more granular about who they want to do business with and who they don't want to do business with. Let's get back to the main conversation. Again, what's the purpose of a company? Fundamentally new concepts and engineering practice. This is what a company should be doing. And the goal is to provide value at lower cost. If you can do that, I think that's what you are as a company. And if not, then you're something else. And then you're in the political realm. There's a lot of problems that our society has to solve in a collective way. That's why we have politics, governments, and all that thing. It's a good thing. Anybody who thinks governments are superfluous, just go to Lebanon, go to, I don't know, places like that. Anybody who thinks government is the solution for everything, go to China, go to North Korea. So we have to find the middle way. There's no other way around. I wish it was easy. We have a problem, government is the solution. No, it's not like that. I think what Ronald Reagan said in one of his famous interviews before his first election was that, a lot of people seek solutions with the government. The government is the problem. I think that is true. In many cases, the government is the problem, but that doesn't mean we should throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are solutions where the government kicks in. For example, this conversation that Elon Musk is having with Twitter right now. We actually have a suggestion, or at least an approach, that Twitter should be pursuing when it comes to how to deal with people on the platform that are doing bad things. And the way we think this should be solved is that the business of Twitter is, again, through fundamentally new concepts and engineering practices, develop solutions for identity, solve identity. You can still use pseudonyms if you want, but identity has to be solved. Twitter needs to know who is behind every tweet. And then if something is illegal, it should be outsourced to the government, in other words, to the judicial system and the police. If somebody does something bad, whatever that may be, something really bad, kiddie porn, things like that, or something that is in the realm of offensive talk towards, say, certain races or certain sexual orientations, if that is a problem that society wants to deal with, it should be outsourced to the police, to a judge that issues a warrant, the same way we deal with problems in the real world, not in the digital world. If you do something that the police deems as worthy to be investigated, you need a warrant, and then you go and get the guy or get the person, and there's bail and all that kind of stuff. This is how it should be solved. So in other words, you see, in this solution that we proposed for Twitter, there is a government. There is a judicial system, which is the government. We certainly don't want to have a private judicial system. That sounds a bit weird. Maybe there's a solution on that front, but we don't know about it. So we have this system, a public judicial system with prosecutors and then defense lawyers and all of that kind of stuff. And if you ask me, I mean, I don't know anything better right now. So this is definitely somewhere where the police and the judicial system should be involved. A lot of safety issues, I think, are much better solved through the government. I mean, I'm in Los Altos now. I'm happy that we have a police here. I wouldn't want to have to hire my own private security guards because there's nobody else to protect me. Is the police really protecting me? I don't know. I hope I don't have to test it. And I do certainly invest a lot of effort in self-defense training and all that kind of stuff to be able to defend myself. But I'm still happy to have the police. So there's definitely a lot of good use cases for government. That's just, I wanted to say that because my views here in this podcast are often definitely interpreted as probably more on the middle to the right fence of the political spectrum. And if that's true or not, I leave that up to the listener and the judgment. But I just want to make clear that I'm incredibly, incredibly thankful for government solutions when they're applicable. And sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. So to get back to the main conversation, where I certainly don't want the government to interfere is when we have this, let's say, woke Inc. or this marriage in hell between social justice warriors and corporations. That's not a good situation. That just smells corruption and one hand washing the other. And in the end, we're just going to get bad outcomes for everybody, in particular for the rest of society. Maybe certain players within, like some social justice warriors, get a little bit more power, and some corporations are able to siphon a little bit more money into their own pockets. When I say corporations, I mean actually real managers, real people, which is the problem. There's real people behind there, and those real people often don't do what the social justice narrative actually was supposed to portray. They do the exact opposite. They say, it's a little bit the sort of socialism for everybody except me kind of thing. My kids go to very fancy private schools. I am living in some gated fancy community, and my fancy golf club is gated. But, we want everybody else to share and work for equity and diversity and all that kind of stuff. So that's not okay. So to summarize, what's the purpose of a company? The purpose of a company is to develop products and services by applying fundamentally new concepts and engineering practices. And that is it. That's where we see the purpose of a company. Whoever is not involved in that, and this is measurable, one way to measure this is the amount of R&D. And if you just look at the S&P 500, it's very interesting. You will see that about 1/3 of companies spends a lot of money on R&D, and 2/3 basically spend nothing. And it's the usual suspects: the Pepsis, the Colas, the food companies, the oil companies, all these companies that we all associate, Wall Street, the companies that we associate with crony capitalism, that I would say lots of people aren't happy with. Those companies don't spend, according to their 10Ks, they basically spend nothing on R&D. Why? Because their businesses are about incrementalism, and it's about rent seeking. And it's not about fundamentally improving the human condition or fundamentally improving outcomes for everybody. That's what real businesses, that's what we at Orange Capital Partners are interested in investing in. And from our point of view, this should also be what actual businesses are. And whoever isn't is in a different space. It's not a corporation. It might not even deserve the limited liability badge, and they should be differently regulated and politicized. That's okay. So this is my suggestion also to Luigi Zingales and Bethany McLean's question. What is wokeism, and then is it okay if we mix it with capitalism? Capitalism works best if we define very clearly what roles people should play. And companies should be playing the role of of trying new things, of taking risk and being rewarded for that. And they should have limited liability, the people who are involved. Everybody else is not part of the capitalist system. It's something else. We can talk about this, the political system, how we govern this. This is a whole different conversation. But a very narrow focus on what is a corporation, the purpose of a corporation, is to invest a big chunk of their sales into research and development to come up with new ideas to make things better at lower cost. Thank you.